Poor acoustics are one of the fastest ways to lose voiceover work. It'll only take a client about 3 seconds to hit delete on your audition if the audio sounds bad. Not because you, the actor, isn't talented, but because the room was doing all the talking. I'm talking about in hums, echoes, and reverb. A lot of voice actors think they need an expensive microphone to land gigs. But what they actually need is something much cheaper and way more important: room treatment. So today, let's get into some real ways to improve the acoustics in your recording space. And I'll also share 2 of my favorite acoustic panel brands, one low cost and one premium, plus a few DIY solutions that sound surprisingly good. So stick around because those could save you hundreds. Okay, so what is room treatment? Well, room treatment is all about controlling what happens to your voice after it leaves your mouth. When you speak, your voice doesn't just go into the microphone, it bounces around the room. It bounces off your desk, it bounces off your walls, the ceiling, your windows, your hardwood floors. All of those surfaces reflect your voice sound waves back towards you and your microphone, and that's what gives you those echoey or tinny or hollow sounds in your microphone, because it picks up all of that. So room treatment products absorb and diffuse those sound waves so that your recording sounds really clean and focused, like it's happening in a real professional recording studio or voiceover booth, not necessarily in your living room or a spare bedroom or an office in your basement. Without that treatment, your voice just bounces around those hard surfaces, kind of like you're recording in a bathroom, and you can imagine how poorly that would sound. Poor acoustics are one of the fastest ways to lose voiceover work. Clients expect clean, controlled audio without a lot of distracting echoes or room tone. Room tone, by the way, is just the ambient natural noise that's going on in your recording space when you are silent. Now, I'll also make a quick note here. Room treatment is not the same thing as soundproofing. Room soundproofing means you are stopping outside noise from getting into your recording space. Things like traffic or leaf blowers, lawn mowers, even your dog or your neighbor's dog. Room treatment means stopping your own voice from bouncing around inside the room. 2 very different things. Oh, and by the way, guess what? Soundproofing, super expensive. Room treatment, way more accessible, even on a budget. So the good news is you don't need to spend a fortune to treat your room with good acoustic products. And in a minute, I'm going to give you some really easy DIY hacks that can make a massive difference, even if you're not in a position to go out and purchase products at the moment. Before we get to that, let's talk about the 3 key types of room treatment. In order to get good results when treating your recording space, you don't want to just slap some foam up on the wall and hope for the best. Professional studios and great home studio setups use a mix of 3 different kinds of treatment. The first is absorption. Absorption is the one people think of most often. They think of those foam wall panels, heavy curtains, or blankets. Absorption is soft materials that soak up the sound waves and stop them from reflecting. Now, I should mention, foam doesn't block sound. It just kind of tampers and tames the reflections. It helps absorb it a little bit so that it's not reflecting back as much. And my tip here is, for absorption, thicker is better, particularly when you're looking at wall panels. The thin stuff might look pretty cool, really sleek and kind of low profile, but it's not going to absorb those low to mid frequencies quite as well, so you will sacrifice a little bit of that for the aesthetic. The second key type of room treatment is diffusion. Diffusers scatter sound in multiple directions so that it doesn't go from your mouth to the wall in front of you and reflect directly back at your mic. It kind of disperses it everywhere. Now, most home studio setups don't necessarily need dedicated diffusers. You can certainly get them if you'd like. But you could even achieve this with bookshelves on the opposite wall from your microphone that have uneven book bindings. That actually can do the trick as well. Keep that in mind when we get to those DIY tips in just a minute. So we've got absorption, we've had diffusers, and the third key type of room treatment and sound treatment are bass traps. The low frequencies out of your mouth, like the warmth in your voice, which is oh so marketable for voice actors. Those lowest frequencies actually tend to build up in the corners of your room. And that's where bass traps come in. They're really dense, kind of wedge-shaped panels that go right up in the corners of your room, and they absorb all of those muddy, boomy tones. If you've already got a little bit of room treatment and you're looking to kind of take a next step forward, add some bass traps into your corners. They do make a big difference. If you're just starting out, this is an optional one. The key to remember here is that the sweet spot for room treatment is a mix. Think of room treatment kind of like you're making soup, right? Absorption is like if you add bread or pasta to the soup, it's going to soak things up. Diffusion is kind of like stirring the pot so that the flavor after you've added an ingredient doesn't clump all in one spot. If you have too much of one kind of sound treatment without the other, you're going to have a bad recipe. You're going to have a bad pot of soup. And so you want to have a good mix of different kinds of sound treatment to give you the best sound, but also make it natural. If you have, say excessive use of the acoustic foam, well, it can make your room actually sound really unnatural or what they call boxy if it's not balanced with other treatment types. And I will say that if you're setting up your home studio right now, or if you're kind of planning on tweaking the current setup that you have, make sure you grab my free home studio starter pack. It's a free PDF download that kind of walks you through the 10 essential pieces of gear or things that a home recording studio setup would need if you're just getting started, or even if you've got a few basic things but don't know what to add next. Helps you avoid some common mistakes. I've also given you key gear recommendations if you're looking to make some purchases. Again, that starter pack, totally free. It's just a PDF, and I will leave a link to get it down in the description. All right, so now let's talk about how to treat your studio space. We're going to start with the DIY treatment, because even if you have already invested some money or are willing to invest some money, if there are ways for you to do it kind of low budget or for free, why not try those as well? There are a lot of expensive products out there that you could drop some serious money into. You might have seen those whisper room isolation booths online. Yeah, those are fantastic, but it is quite an investment. So, if you've got the space and the cash and you're willing to make some major upgrades and renovations in a portion of your house, then I'm all for you looking further into options like that. But aside from essentially building a mini voiceover booth in some room in your house, let me give you a few budget-friendly ways to treat the workspace that you actually have. First off, and you've probably maybe heard this before, but it really does work, set up your voiceover booth in a closet. Clothes equal absorption. All of those soft surfaces in a guest room closet, all of those clothes, they just suck up sound waves. Just make sure there isn't a hard surface directly behind your mic, like that wall at the back of the closet. Another option, whether you're recording in a closet or if you're in a spare room or a finished part of your basement, something like that, hang moving blankets behind and around your microphone area. You could even make a homemade PVC frame or curtain rods and hang moving blankets from that. I've actually done this before with the help of my husband. Added heavy-duty grommets to one side of a thick quilted moving blanket, and then hung those grommets on a series of hooks installed over top of a door or alongside a wall. My tip here is just make sure that you install hooks in a way that they can handle a lot of weight. Those moving blankets are very heavy, but it's a really quick and easy way to just add some sound absorption to walls or door frames. Next up, who doesn't like to build a fort? Basically, create a reflector shield using things like couch cushions or a folded comforter on the wall behind your mic. So you could prop a large couch cushion or kind of a hard foam mattress pad behind your microphone. For those of you who have hardwood floors, use rugs. Floor reflections are super sneaky when it comes to room treatment. Hanging quilts and tapestries on the walls really works well. Drape thick curtains. If you have a room that has windows in it, make sure that you drape nice thick curtains over those windows that you can close when you are recording. So again, you're not reflecting sound off of that hard glass. Instead, those thick curtains are going to take care of it. For me, the space that I record in has wall-to-wall carpeting, which absolutely helps. In fact, my recording space has wall-to-wall carpeting. It has low ceilings. And there's also a few overstuffed chairs and sofas in my recording space that I've got also piled with quilts and blankets and things. So there's a lot of soft material that's just absorbing sound at different angles in my recording space. And I highly recommend that for you as well. I mentioned before in terms of diffusion, on the opposite side of the room from where your microphone is, stack books or random objects that don't create a flat surface that kind of zigzag or jut out from each other, and that will act as a natural diffuser on the opposite side of the room. So these kinds of things can get you kind of 80% of the way there. You can really do a lot, particularly if you get creative, to create a pretty decent treated space to record voiceovers with just things that you can either find around the house or things that might only cost you $10, $20, $30 at the local hardware store or big box store to kind of put together. Now, if you want a truly pro sound, then the next step, obviously after that, it would be investing in some actual acoustic sound treatment products. So if you're ready to invest just a little, these are really solid and simple choices. I will say quickly that I'm going to leave links for these products down in the description below. With the caveat to let you know, I am an Amazon associate, which means that the links that I provide you are affiliate links, so that if you do go to click those links and you check out the products and you decide that they're right for you, I will simply earn a very small commission off of that. No extra cost to you. It doesn't cost you anything, but it does help me out here on the channel. My budget pick, and I said I'm going to give you a budget pick and a premium pick. My budget pick is Focus Sound acoustic foam panels. And there are a number of different kinds that you can choose from with Focus Sound. The Focus Sound foam panels are super easy to install. They have double-sided adhesive tape on the back. They're very lightweight. They have good absorption and some pretty decent density. I will say that some users, when you go through reviews on a product like this, some users report issues with the quality and the stickiness of the adhesive tape that is included. So you might want to consider purchasing separately a high quality double-sided adhesive tape to install these onto your wall. For sound panels like this, it's really best when you use them in clusters. But you might not want to do the thing that you see a lot online, which is space them really evenly, making like a checkerboard pattern. That really kind of just creates reflective gaps in between them when you stagger them out. So if you want to make that checkerboard pattern, make sure that they're touching. Make sure you're not leaving gaps of wall in between them. Now, like most acoustic foam, Focus Sound panels aren't very effective at absorbing lower frequencies. And so if you're going to want to tackle those lower frequencies, like we said, you're going to want bass traps made of denser materials. And we're going to talk about those more in a minute. Now, my premium pick for absorption panels would be anything by the brand Auralex. And you might even be familiar with this brand because it's a very popular one. The Auralex Studio Foam panels. These are the ones that have been trusted by pros for years. It's what a lot of professional voice actors and professional studios use in their setup. They are a very reliable, very good brand, and it's why most people are willing to invest the extra money to purchase Auralex. Auralex offers panels in a ton of different shapes and colors, so that way you're able to really design a studio space that's functional for you, but gives you some creative room in terms of the aesthetic treatment of the room as well. Customize it with your colors and your shapes and the things that really speak to your personality and your studio's personality. They do have slightly higher density, and so that obviously equals better absorption. Now, the Auralex foam is really known to be durable. It's not going to crumble or deteriorate quickly. Some of the cheaper alternatives will do that. I'm not saying necessarily that cheaper alternative like the Focus Sound that I mentioned is going to do that, but there are some really cheap brands of acoustic panels out there made of material that's just going to disintegrate within a year or two, particularly if you've got a really dry environment in your room. I always kind of like to give you the watch out for this. You will notice in the reviews that some users have reported a really noticeable chemical smell when they open and unpack Auralex panels, but they do say that it often dissipates over time. And so just to keep that in mind. Installation on them is generally easy. Again, if you read the reviews online about any of these products, you'll sometimes find customers complaining about the recommended mounting methods. Some of them will give you a mounting method like a spray adhesive, which sometimes can damage walls. So as I suggested about finding a more durable double-sided adhesive tape to mount the Focus Sound panels, I recommend whichever sound treatment panels you choose to go with, do a little bit of research online on what the best method of installation would be for you and your space, because you want to go in knowing that, hey, I don't know if I want this to be permanent. I don't know if maybe I want it to be temporary, or maybe I'm going to want to move them around. You don't want to create more work for yourself later if it's going to damage your paint, damage your walls, that type of thing. There's tons of creative ideas on the internet on how to get this stuff mounted, so just be sure you do your research and your due diligence. I will give you also a bass trap pick because, as I said, sometimes you want to make that extra upgrade and get those bass traps into the corner. Auralex also makes a great bass trap. This is the Leonard bass trap. It just goes up into the corners, smooths out that muddy low end. Completely optional, but if you want to make a major upgrade and have the budget, and I should say that this particular model from Auralex, the Leonard, it's a little bit more affordable than larger bass traps, but if this is one of those optional things that, hey, I think I'd like to add a couple of bass traps as well, this would be a model that I would recommend. Last but not least, and it's something that these two brands do provide information on, but I will say this as a caveat for any acoustic sound treatments, no matter what the brand is that you are buying, please be sure to look for fire safety ratings. This is not where you want to go cheaper is better without reading the safety indications, because as you can imagine, adding these types of soft material, foam material, panels onto your walls, if you buy a brand that doesn't follow proper fire safety regulations, they could become a fire hazard for you. So just be sure that you are buying a brand that's reliable and that provides all sorts of information on their fire safety rating. All of that said, just remember, more panels do not equal better sound. Just treat your reflection points in your room, not your entire room. So where do you mount these? Well, for best results, behind you, not just behind the mic, but behind you. The first reflection points are going to be your side walls and absolutely the wall that is across from you. And as I said, the ceiling above your microphone, if possible. That is a sneaky place for sound waves. Here's the takeaway. Room treatment really isn't the sexiest part of a home studio setup, but it just might be one of the most important. And it's one that's overlooked so often. You know, putting out clean, controlled, and reflection-free audio is a really solid first step at setting yourself apart from the competition. Clients will instantly hear the difference in a well-treated recording space. So the lesson here is the studio setup order of priority. Control your room sound, then worry about upgrading your microphone down the road. Most casting directors are going to take clean, treated audio from a $100 mic over echoey audio from a $1,000 mic. Test it. Experiment. Put up some treatment, some of that DIY stuff, record, listen back to it, have a critical ear, and then just adjust your treatment as needed. Add things if you hear spaces that you think need a little more oomph, or try a different DIY method. You can do things like a clap test, or where you turn your microphone on and clap at different places around the room and listen back to that to see if any of them sound really echoey. It all comes down to knowing that your recording space is a big piece of the puzzle, and it is a really important one. Beyond that, though, the gear that you choose to fill that recording space also matters, and honestly, not all of it is worth spending the big bucks on. So before you drop another dollar, why don't you watch my video, The Best Microphone and Home Studio Gear Worth Buying, and you'll find out exactly what's worth the investment and what to skip.